Everybody plays the credit card game differently, and that's a beautiful thing in my opinion. However, I do think some of us forget that here on YouTube, both creators and viewers as well, which kind of leads people to look down on certain redemption styles that don't fit the styles that they like. And to me, I just don't think that that should ever happen. As y'all know, I'm the kind of person who travels mainly domestically, either by road tripping to certain destinations or by traveling in economy, and I'll sprinkle in an international trip here and there. So my strategy is drastically different than somebody who only saves their points for international first class flights and stays in the most luxury hotels. But that is a great thing in my opinion, despite what you might see in the comment sections of our videos. And I think that's exactly why so many of y'all resonate with my content. Through this video, I hope that you're going to get a better understanding of my travel and redemption habits by me explaining first all of the trips that I've booked in 2024, including the different types of points that I used, the cent per point value of those points, and how I actually booked those either through a travel portal or by transferring out or etc. Secondly, I'll explain my personal value of the main point ecosystems that I use to book my travel. And then thirdly, I'll discuss what credit cards I prefer to use on these trips to get the most value from all of my spend. And hopefully by hearing all of this, you'll gain a new or maybe just refreshed perspective on the travel side of this credit card game that we love so much. And then maybe that'll help you understand why I make the certain redemptions that I do and can see whether or not that's actually the same way you might want to redeem your points. And either way, it's all good with me. I'm never going to sit here and tell you that my redemption strategy is exactly what you should do, but I do want to be open and transparent about it so you can make a better informed decision for yourself. So let's start by breaking down all of the redemptions that I've made so far in 2024, both trips that I've already taken, as well as trips that I plan to take throughout the rest of the year. And I actually still have a few months worth of trips that need to be booked. So this number is only going to go up from here, but I figured it's still a good time to make this video. As of right now, though, I've booked 10 trips that are out of state, as well as like 5 to 10 more that are within the state. So it's been a busy year, but that's obviously a huge blessing. Now, I'm not going to run through every bit of math here today. We're going to save that for the final 2024 redemption video that I'll make at the end of this year. But I'm going to break down every trip that I've booked, why I took them, how I made the trip happen for as close to free as possible, and then accumulate all of that information to give me an average dollar amount saved and cent per point value for all of the trips that I've booked so far. So the first trip that I took this year was out to Savannah, Georgia and Hilton Head, South Carolina, little joint trip there. And that was mainly just to explore the Southeast coast because one of my buddies recently moved out there after graduation and everything. So I went down there to spend some time with him and work from there and stuff. So it was a good time. Now, the way that I booked this trip was actually a bit unique. What I decided to do was utilize airline alliances, specifically the One World Alliance, to book American Airlines flights using British Airways Avios. And the points I used to transfer over to British Airways was my American membership rewards points. And the total points cost of this trip was 38,500 points. The next trip I took was a boys trip out to Nashville, Tennessee. And that was one that I transferred to Southwest to make happen. As y'all probably know, Southwest is my most used domestic airline by far, being out of Austin, Texas. And in order to book Southwest flights, I transfer my Chase Ultimate Rewards points over to them directly, which generally gives me an average 1.4 to 1.5 cent per point valuation. And now that I have the Chase Sapphire Reserve, I'm transferring out directly to Southwest a bit less because I do get a guaranteed 1.5 cent per point redemption rate through Chase's travel portal with that Sapphire Reserve. But yeah, this trip only cost me 18,062 points, so not too bad. And even though my cent per point value wasn't super high, it wasn't a ton of points, so I was okay with doing it that time. After that, I took a trip out to Charlotte, North Carolina for the Spartan race that I ran a while back. That was a really cool thing that I got to train for a few months before that happened and ended up finishing in the top 2% with a couple of my buddies. So that was really cool. And funny enough, this was the third trip that I took this year, as well as the third different type of redemption strategy I implemented because I booked this trip using Chase's travel portal and my Chase Sapphire Reserve. In doing so, I only used 37,615 points. And of course, the cent per point value is no secret here, sitting at 1.5 because I use the Chase travel portal. That's going to be the case for all of my Chase travel portal redemptions. Next up, had a trip to Las Vegas, Nevada for Grow with Video Live, which is a big YouTube conference that I attended with Stan the Credit Frog. I believe I posted basically about all of these trips in my community feed at some point. And of course, the members of the channel also have special access to certain videos where I did talk about these trips a little bit more. But yeah, spending a few days out there with Stan was honestly so fun, and I look forward to doing it again next year. And considering this was a full business trip and I had to pay cash for the hotel, I figured I might as well just pay cash for the flight this time too, which I never do. So I guess actually that was the fourth type of redemption strategy I implemented here, and not really a redemption strategy, but I guess a booking strategy in this case. And it cost me $308.96. That's not going to go into our calculations here today, but at least I earned some points for that spend, which is always a plus too. Now, speaking of earning points for a big purchase, like flights in this case, with 13 different credit cards, it's not always easy for me to track what card I should be using for those purchases. And the app that I use to help me organize that information is Max Rewards. Max Rewards is an all-in-one credit card management app that allows you to track things like your total point balances, card balances, bill due dates, and more all in one convenient app. So that means no more switching between all of your different lenders' apps to get this information. You can do it all with Max Rewards. Also, as y'all know, a major way that I'm able to even take this many trips in the first place is because of all of the welcome offers that I receive. And with all of those welcome offers come minimum spending requirements that I have to keep track of on each of those cards. And certain lenders won't even give you any kind of way to track that without contacting them directly. But luckily for us, Max Rewards can help us with that as well. While the free features of Max Rewards are great, which does include that welcome bonus tracker, they also have a paid tier called Max Rewards Gold that not only automatically activates your quarterly rotating categories for you on your cards like your Chase Freedom Flex, but will also automatically activate all of your credit card offers for you as long as your cards are syncing with the app. So if you want to try out even just their host of free features, please be sure to download it through the link in my description. And during the sign up process, if you enter the promo code Spencer, you'll get a 1-month discount off of your annual Max Rewards Gold subscription if you do decide to upgrade. As always, thank you to Max Rewards for sponsoring this video, but let's get back into the content. A few weeks later, I took a nice little vacation up to Denver, Colorado for the Supercross race that was taking place there. For those of y'all that don't know, I do ride dirt bikes and I keep up with the sport as well. So I went out there with a couple buddies and watched the Supercross race out there. And once again, I decided to utilize my tried and true strategy that I am shying away from more now since I'm using the Chase Travel Portal more. But I transferred my Chase points directly to Southwest to make this booking happen. And it cost me 18,900 points. I do want to mention here too that I was under the assumption whenever I made my how to book Southwest flights with Chase points video that the redemption rate between booking through the portal and booking directly with Southwest was only like 0.1 cents per point maybe. But by booking Southwest flights through the Chase portal, I still actually earned Southwest miles for that flight because they see it as a paid cash booking. So in reality, by booking through the Chase Travel Portal with my Sapphire Reserve, I not only get the 1.5 cent per point redemption rate, but also get Southwest points on top of that. The only thing that is kind of annoying is that you have to deal with cancellations and stuff through Chase, which can be a bit of a headache. Now for another interesting type of trip, a lot more recently, I took a road trip out to Savannah, Georgia again, like I did last year. So this is my third time to Savannah in the last 6 months or so, but I did make a lot of stops along the way. And this was actually my first trip in my Sprinter van that I recently bought for my stepbrothers. And it's a fully converted Sprinter van that's basically just an RV at this point. It's got the whole, bathroom, shower, king size bed in there, sink, fridge, AC, heat, all of that stuff. So it's really cool. But that was my first trip with it. So I stopped in Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia. So got to cover the Southeast coast once again really well, which I really enjoyed. But since it was a road trip in the Sprinter van, I didn't have to use any points for hotels or anything like that. All I really did was use and abuse the Amex Business Gold card for that 4x back on gas purchases, which I have now changed my strategy on, and I'll talk about that later in the credit cards I most use while traveling section. But yeah, I did earn quite a few points by paying for all of my gas on the Amex Business Gold. Then I had a little tiny trip from Austin to Houston to go actually pick up the Sprinter van whenever I decided to purchase it from my stepbrothers. And that one I once again used the Chase Travel Portal for, but it actually was pretty dang expensive for that one just quick flight. It cost me a total of 19,232 points, but hey, still a good redemption rate, just an expensive flight for, 20 minutes or whatever on the plane. Now we're getting into my most recent trip that I booked, and that was to San Luis Obispo, California, where I attended my friend's sister's graduation at Cal Poly. Ended up actually meeting one of y'all out there too, so Dylan, what's up if you're watching this video? But once again, you're going to start to see a theme here. I booked this trip through the Chase Travel Portal to lock in a guaranteed 1.5 cent per point redemption rate. And of course, going out to California, going to be a bit more expensive. That cost me 48,480 points to make that happen. So those are all domestic trips so far, mostly booked through Chase's Travel Portal, but I still have 2 more trips that I've booked this year and not taken, and they're both international as well. One's to the Bahamas and the other one is to Croatia. Now, of course, the Bahamas not that far away, but still technically international. And as for the Bahamas trip specifically, this is a trip that I'm taking with my girlfriend's family, and I decided to go ahead and book a hotel room for both of us, as well as both of our flights using my points, since I have the luxury of earning a lot of credit card points being a credit card YouTuber. So as for the flight specifically, I once again used the Chase Travel Portal because it was going to be a United flight. The average United redemption rate is going to be 1.2 cents per point. So by using the Chase Travel Portal, I gave myself a boost there. And that's exactly why I book all of my flights domestically these days through the Chase Travel Portal, because for the most part, every domestic airline is going to give you less than 1.5 cents per point for your redemptions. Of course, you need to check this every single time, but that's a pretty good rule to follow. But yeah, so for 2 of us, it cost me 86,400 points to get over to the Bahamas. So effectively, actually less per person to get to the Bahamas than San Luis Obispo. And I assume these beaches are going to be pretty beautiful. So I'm excited about that. And then for the hotel, this is the first hotel that I've actually booked this year. And of course, it's going to be with my tried and true company, Hyatt. Specifically, we're staying at the Grand Hyatt Baja Mar, and I transferred my Chase points directly over to Hyatt to make this redemption happen. On the screenshots here, you're going to see that I used 100,000 points to book 4 nights at this hotel, but I ended up actually having to add a 5th night to this stay that cost me another 25,000 points. So in total, I used 125,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards points, or Hyatt points in this case, to make this happen. And then as for the last trip that I booked, being the biggest one, before we get into my personal value of each of these point currencies based on my actual redemption strategies, I will be taking a trip to Croatia with my step siblings and step cousins, and it's going to be a really good time. As for the flights, I used all Amex membership rewards points to make this flight happen, and that's split into 2 different airlines I used. One, the main one being Air France, and then I also used Delta to make a positioning flight, which I know is not a good redemption rate, but I just didn't want to have to pay really like any cash for this trip that I didn't have to, so I sucked it up and used Delta. But as for the Air France flight specifically, I used 127,000 points to book a business class flight both to and from Croatia. And I had the one positioning flight getting me from JFK back to Austin on the way back through Delta, which cost me 21,000 points. For the hotel though, once again, had to check out Hyatt. So I booked the Hotel Vestibule Place for 2 nights, which cost me 43,000 points. And that's just, one night on the front and back end of the yacht cruise that we're doing. That way my flights were easier to make, of course. Okay, so now that we've itemized all of those trips, you know how many points I used at least. Let's talk about my personal value of each point currency that I'm currently earning in, as well as how many points I've used with each lender and the average cent per point value of those points. Starting with, of course, the one that I use the most of, that being Chase Ultimate Rewards. So far this year through the Chase Travel Portal, I've used 191,727 points. Now that is obviously a lot of points to use through the travel portal. That's a cash value of just under $2,000 that I've spent through their portal, but I've always gotten a 1.5 cent per point valuation. So the actual cash value of the trips I've taken would be 50% more than that. At the same time though, I've also transferred out 204,962 points, and that is a couple of Southwest flights, but mainly the hotel stays with Hyatt. So that brings me to a total Chase points used for the year of 396,689 points. And remember, once again, the year is not over yet, and I expect I'll stay at another Hyatt or 2. And also we'll probably fly with Southwest through the Chase Travel Portal again, so I'm always in need of these dang Chase points. But the cash value of all of the trips that I booked with my Chase Ultimate Rewards points is $7,266.71. The lowest cent per point value that I've gotten for any of the trips that I booked was 1.36 cents per point, which was that Southwest flight to Nashville that, again, these days I probably would have booked through the Chase portal instead. And my highest cent per point value I got was 2.57, which is going to be the redemption rate I got for the Grand Hyatt Baja Mar in the Bahamas. That brings my average cent per point value of Chase Ultimate Rewards points so far for the year to 1.83 cents per point, very close to that 2 cent per point estimation that a lot of us quote here on YouTube. Now with Amex, I actually ended up doing a little bit better. All of my points with Amex were transferred out to partners though, so none of them used through the portal. I've never found a good portal redemption with Amex so far, so I'm going to continue to transfer those points out. And I spent a total of 186,500 points so far this year, with a cash value of those points of $5,914.71. So we're talking a little less than $1,300 worth of cash value for a little over 200,000 less points used. The lowest cent per point value I got with my membership rewards points was 1.24, and that was for that Delta positioning flight during the Croatia trip, which of course we kind of expect because Delta just never gives a good redemption rate, especially with the added taxes and fees that they have. And the highest cent per point value I got was 3.74, which was the Air France business class flight to Croatia. And then when adding in all of the taxes and fees and breaking each cent per point value down by the actual trip that I took, I got an average redemption rate of 2.88 cents per point so far with my Amex points. Now that begs the question, what about all the other ecosystems I earn in, that being 1, Capital One, 2, Bilt, and 3, Marriott? I actually have not used a single point in any of those ecosystems yet this year. However, I do estimate that my Capital One and Bilt points are worth 2 cents per point on average because that's what I'm seeing with my other lenders, and I plan on using them in a very similar way, particularly very similar to Amex. And then my Marriott points I only estimate at 0.84 cents per point because that's kind of what the point guy estimates them at, so that's a pretty safe bet. Now, what are some of the takeaways though of these numbers? It's cool to hear all of the numbers, but what does this actually tell us? Well, to start, I know that I use way more Chase points than I do any other currency, and this is exactly why I focus so heavily on my 524 status and am constantly adding new ink cards to my setup. So for those of y'all that are wondering why I love Chase so much, this is exactly it. Chase's transfer partners and the boost that I get with my Chase Sapphire Reserve through the travel portal fits my travel habits so well that I'm going to be using a ton of their points all the time. And luckily, Chase has the ability for you to constantly get new welcome offers on their cards with their 24-month rule on the Freedom cards, the 48-month rule on the Sapphire cards, and really no welcome offer rule on the Ink cards. Hence why you can get so many of those and just constantly be refreshing your Chase balance. And that's exactly what I've been doing and plan to continue doing over time. Also, another takeaway is what I just mentioned, in the sense that my average cent per point value is very close to that 2 cent per point estimation that we hear from the points guy. So for those y'all out there saying, oh, you only ever redeem for, 1.4, 1.5 cents per point with Chase. Well, whenever you have a couple of international trips here and there, or you stay with Hyatt a lot, for example, your average cent per point value is going to be boosted and come out to a actual respectable rate by the end of the year. It just kind of depends on your travel habits. Another important point to talk about here is the fact that I've been utilizing the heck out of the Chase travel portal, which is something I didn't really expect to be doing. And this does have its pros and cons for sure. As for the pros, for one, it's super easy to book. You don't even have to worry about taxes and fees. You just pay the points up front and you're good. Of course, you need to make sure that the prices in the portal are the same or better than the prices through their websites directly. But on top of that, you get that guaranteed 1.5 cent per point redemption rate, which is just so powerful for domestic flights specifically. And like I mentioned earlier too, you still do earn points on your flights, at least in my experience, by booking through the portal instead of booking, direct with the websites. So that's a small pro that can add up over time depending on how many trips you're taking. As for the cons, the biggest one is that changing flight times is going to be extremely difficult, and it's also really annoying to deal with cancellations through Chase. You just have to realize that the way that these airlines see your booking is that it was basically done through a travel agency, specifically like Expedia. So they're not going to give you a ton of grace whenever you don't even book directly with them, and they're going to give you a hard time, tell you to just go contact your travel agency and have them figure it out. And whenever you're in the airport having a really bad day, that is the last thing that you want to do. I promise you. We had this happen to me and my buddy recently, and luckily it all ended up working out, but it was just super annoying that we had to deal with Chase and American Airlines in this specific case. Another big takeaway here as it comes to hotels specifically is that, for one, I'm really not staying in them very often. Like only 2 out of the 10 trips I've booked so far have a hotel as a part of that. But further than that, I'm really only staying at Hyatt's right now. And that's kind of funny considering I have the Marriott Boundless credit card and have been targeting their ecosystem a bit more heavily recently. But hey, at the same time, this is kind of eye-opening, and it shows me that I either need to change up my travel habits a little bit to fit my setup, or just make my setup fit my travel habits better by maybe focusing more on Hyatt stays and just applying for more Chase cards rather than focusing on the Marriott stuff as heavily, but time will tell what I do there. On that note too, this kind of made me realize that I probably should start utilizing my other point currencies more, considering I haven't touched any but 2 all year. Like for example, maybe I should use my Bilt points to lighten my Chase point load by booking Hyatts through Bilt instead, or by using my Capital One miles to use airline alliances to book domestic flights. But considering at the same time, Amex and Chase are who I have the most points with at any given time, I don't really need to change this. It's kind of good the way that I'm doing things right now. And final note before we get into the cards that I prefer to use when traveling, I want to mention that I do have the luxury again of earning a ton of points from referrals, and that's one of the big reasons I can redeem so many points this year without it really impacting me too heavily. So for one, I'm very blessed and thankful that y'all use my links, and that helps support me directly and helps me make videos just like this one. But just remember that your travel habits may be different because you don't have quite as many points. I just like to share exactly what works for me. And even though I do have a lot more points than the normal person, I hope, and actually I know that you can learn stuff from these videos still, if you just come at it with that perspective in mind. Now, diving into part 3, let's discuss the 4 main credit cards that I prefer to use while traveling. And as with every one of my videos, I do have all of these cards linked down in the description if you want to support the channel at no additional cost to you. But of course, no pressure to do so, especially if you have, friends or family's links. I just want you to know that it's down there. So the first main credit card that I use, and it's literally the one that I use for basically everything when I travel, is the Chase Sapphire Reserve. So for one, the biggest thing that I use it for as it comes to travel is that 50% boost that it gives me on my points through their portal. But further than that, I also use it as my daily spend card because it gives me 3x back on my dining purchases and my travel purchases, which is pretty key whenever you're traveling. As for the benefit side of things, it does give me access to the Chase Sapphire Terrace Lounge in the Austin airport, which is my home airport, as well as all the other Chase lounges too. But that's been one of the biggest factors in why I love this card so much, because before I had it, I couldn't get into any airport lounges in Austin at all. It does give me priority pass access as well, so that helps me out whenever I'm traveling in other airports, but that definitely gets utilized less than my Chase Sapphire Lounge access that I have on the card. As for some smaller details, for one, it has top tier travel protections, which is always just nice peace of mind to have whenever I'm using this card for all my travel purchases. And it also, of course, has no foreign transaction fees, which means I can use it anywhere, and it's a Visa, so again, it's accepted worldwide. So it's just kind of a powerhouse of a card for me, and it's one that I don't really plan on canceling unless I maybe move or something. But having that Chase Sapphire Lounge access, specifically the Sapphire Terrace Lounge in Austin that requires a Chase Sapphire Reserve, is a big reason that I would keep this card over something like the Amex Platinum, for example. My secondary travel card is going to be the Capital One Venture X, and honestly, I mainly use it for the 2x back on miscellaneous purchases it gives me, as well as access to the Capital One lounges, specifically in DFW. That's probably, well, it's the only one that I've actually been to so far, but I hope to be able to get into a couple more. I can also use it to give me extra guests into the Priority Pass lounges since I, again, already have that on my Chase Sapphire Reserve. Get a couple more guests technically on the Venture X as well. So that is a nice little perk, but it overlaps a lot with the Sapphire Reserve. I have been using this card as my main rental car card because it gives me Hertz President Circle status, but that status does end in 2025, and it's going to cause me to honestly reevaluate this card pretty heavily with that annual fee that it has of $395. But for now, it is still in my setup until at least February of next year. This card also has good travel protection, so it's nice to use for the rental cars, for example, and also no foreign transaction fees. So if for whatever reason my CSR got denied, I could pull in the Venture X and use it when I need to. The last two cards are a little bit less utilized, but still hold an important place in my travel wallet. The first one being the Citi Custom Cash because it gives me 5x back on my gas purchases. As I mentioned earlier, for my road trip up to Savannah, I was using the Amex Business Gold card for all of my gas purchases to get 4x Amex membership rewards points back on every dollar spent there. But now that I have the Citi Strata Premier card in my setup, I decided to bring in the Citi Custom Cash again to give me that 5x back and start to build my Citi thank you point stash that I can use for travel down the line too. I didn't even mention them earlier in one of the ecosystems I've been earning in because I forget that I even have access to their transfer partners already, but that is another type of point that I want to start using more. And then we have a card that I don't talk about too much because it's kind of just there for the benefits, that being the Marriott Boundless card. Now the Marriott Boundless card actually does stay in my Passport wallet here, which of course contains like my passport, my SIM card ejector, as well as my 2 Priority Pass cards here as well. And this is all like RFID protected. I think it's like a Spigen wallet or something, but I always keep that in my travel bag with me. And the real reason that I even have it is for Marriott purchases, like if I was staying at a Marriott property, which of course I haven't done this year, which is kind of crazy to me. But further than that, it doesn't need to be in my wallet for this, but it does give me Silver Elite status with Marriott, and specific to the Silver Elite status on this card, it gives me free enhanced Wi-Fi, which is pretty nice. And of course, it does have the free night certificate worth 35,000 points. So that in combination with the 5 free nights I earned with the welcome offer are going to need to be used by the end of September. So that is something I plan on doing, and I could still use some advice on where y'all think I should use those. I do see all of your comments there, and I do kind of keep putting that in the back of my head as to where I might want to use them. And of course, I do use other cards in my daily wallet while I travel. Like the Citi Strata Premier is still in my wallet for the 3x back on groceries, and my Bilt MasterCard stays in there for like my coffee purchases and stuff like that. But the 2 main cards that I use very consistently when I travel are the Chase Sapphire Reserve and the Capital One Venture X, with the addition of the Citi Custom Cash if I'm road tripping. At this point, if you want to see all of the redemptions that I made in 2023 laid out in a similar style to this, please go ahead and click into this video next. And as always, Odin and I both want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.